Well, as I've been mentioning over the last few weeks, we've been working our way through the auction results from the sales over in London back in November, and I think this will be the last one that we do. I don't know if we've done Roseberries yet. I'll double check. But this is the Wolley and Wallis sales, and they had four of them, including the Japanese sale, between the 11th and the about the 13th of November, all in a couple of days. They had, I think overall, I think their results were really quite good. The sell-through rate, it seems to be among the highest of all the auctions that were held. It looks like probably about 80 or 85 or 90% of the lots sold, maybe more, from what I could see. The price results seemed quite good across the board. And Wolley and Wallis tend to be fairly conservative on their estimates. You may recall when we did the preview for the sales, I thought that some of the estimates looked very low, and they were, and we'll get into those. There were some very good results, particularly with chingwares, not surprisingly, and Republic pieces did very well, and because they had some in several sales, so it wasn't just a one-off. If you go back through and look at all the Republic porcelains and even I think maybe some of the early PROC pieces did extremely well. It seems like there's a surge in that market right now with some of the results we're seeing, which isn't a big surprise because so many other areas have gotten so strong. The next logical progression is, of course, into the Republic wares. So there was a pair of Guangzhou vases that we talked about. The Kongs that did very well, that were estimated very modestly at $1,000 or so, 1,000 pounds. But we'll get through it. We'll just work our way through it. I'm not going to show all of them because there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lots, and we'll be here until tomorrow if I go through them all. But I've pulled out about 20 or 30 or so lots to look at and give you some sense of how the sales did. But overall, bravo, they did great. The first sale we're going to talk about is this. This was the collection of bronzes. You may remember they had a bronze collector, hand warmers and Hu Wenming bronzes and all kinds of interesting pieces. And this market seems in pretty good shape for the time being. The results were good. All right, and we'll hop over here to this. It was this one. This one we did talk about. I remember we talked about it in the preview. We thought it was awfully nice. I thought the estimate was low. It was only estimated at 4,000 to 6,000 pounds. And this is a very nice gilt bronze by Hu Wenming. And let's see, how big was this thing? It was fairly small. Yeah, 5 inches tall, roughly. Very small vase. And it was estimated at, $5,000 or $6,000, and it did 5,000 or 6,000 pounds. In the end, it brought about 20,000 pounds, plus the premium, of course. And so that worked out to about 26 or so thousand pounds. And in U.S. currency, that comes in at around $32,000. This is the bronze. Beautiful example. It looked to be in outstanding condition, which is, of course, very important for these. And I don't see a lot of wear on it. It's a very good example. And there's the mark on the bottom, so forth. Heck of a nice thing. And it did great. 20,320 pounds. It was estimated at 4,000 to 6,000 pounds. So obviously it went way over its estimate. But again, I think they know that. I think that, increasingly I'm noticing auction companies are using the estimates sort of to give a much stronger indication of where the reserves might be. And I think on this, probably the reserve, if there was one, was way under the actual value. In other words, it's the way of saying they're here to sell it. And that was a good piece. And then there was this nice big, probably 18th century incense burner. And it's interesting because there was a similar big burner that just sold on a site in America. I forget which one it was. You'll have to remind me. That just sold for about $5,500. It was estimated very modestly, and it ended up with the buyer's premium about 6,000, and here's another one. This one it could be from the Kangxi period. It's a very fine one, beautiful patina on it, and this was a large incense burner. Again, big incense burners are very popular. It has coiled elephant on the top, elephant legs. It's a well-known type from the 18th century. And this did very, very well. It brought 7,620 pounds plus the premium, or around $12,000 US. But it was big. It was 34 centimeters tall, which comes in at around about 14 and a half inches tall. So it's a big one, and had a very, very good color. That's the thing that I think really sold this, was the color of it was excellent. And the condition was very good too. Undisturbed surface. And then this was the goose. or the duck rather, the jade duck, bronze duck incense burner with gilding on it. It was estimated at 2,000 to 3,000. I thought it was awfully nice. It's a very good example. These don't turn up too often. The surface on it was great, as you can see. There was gilt splashed on it. There's his face, or his head. I really like these. A number of years ago, I had one of these. I absolutely loved it. I didn't want to sell it, but I did. And it's on its original base, which is beautifully done. Sometimes you see these snapped off with the legs broken off, and they've mounted them on a block of wood or something. This was the whole package. It measured 28 centimeters, just a hair under a foot tall, about 11 inches tall, and it was estimated at 2,000 to 3,000 pounds. Ended up going for 6,900 pounds. Including the buyer's premium. Excuse me. These include the buyer's premium, so I won't add the 30% on. $6,985. So that put it up around about 9,000 US, roughly, somewhere in there. Great example. Very, very attractive. And so just to adjust the figures here, this sold for $20,320, including the premium. This was the Hu Wenming piece, so we'll correct that. That would bring it in at around 24,000 US, roughly. And the incense burner, 7,600, including the premium, which puts it at about 9,000 US. Again, very respectable prices. I'm not changing my thoughts on that at all. And then that was the sale. The whole sale had some very nice bronzes in it. If you're a bronze buyer, I said it the other day when we did the preview last month. If you're a bronze buyer, go through and copy these pictures, save them, because these are great references for not only dating and aging things, but giving you an accurate estimation of value. Now, granted, these came from a single collection, and single collections tend to draw a lot of interest, but it doesn't necessarily mean one that you find out there going to a small auction where they have just a one-off in the sale. You won't be able to do something with it and maybe make a little bit of money with it if that's your goal, or build some value into your own collection. All right, so these are all nice pieces. So always save images on a drive somewhere of things that you collect when they turn up for auction, so you can keep track of things. All right, and then the next sale was this one, Fine Asian Art. And again, they had good results, and they had things at all the price ranges. Most of the things were under $20,000. Many of them were under 10 in U.S. currency. They had a few that went over that, but there were some wonderful things in here. And this wasn't a huge sale. This was not a huge sale, but it was a very, very good sale. How many lots were in this sale, roughly? 200 lot sale, it looks like. 200 lots, that's lot 215, lot 101. 101. No, so it was about 100. It was about 120 lots, and we'll go through some of these. Let's see here. There was this again. This is one of these Republic pieces. It was estimated at just 500 to 1,000 pounds. It ended up going for $4,445, 45,000 pounds, which is roughly about 6,000 US dollars. And it wasn't huge. It was only about 9 inches tall. But it was a really lovely, fine export. A lot of these were made for the export market. They weren't necessarily technically export, but they were made for export. A lot of them. Very fine Republic piece, beautifully done. They also sold them, of course, in China. But this was a really lovely one. Nice yellows in it, mask handles on the sides. Had everything going for it. Very, very nice. And the estimate of 1,000 to 1,000 pounds or less, that was probably fairly reasonable a number of years ago. Back in the 80s, when these turned up in the market, they generally went for about $100 because they weren't considered to be old enough or interesting enough or from a period of any merit. And now, of course, that's all changed because people have developed an appreciation for them. And there are some museums that began collecting these early. The Museum of Fine Arts in Boston has some exceptional pieces of Republic ware that were collected by the Bernats when the pieces were new and first coming over. The Bernat family, Paul and Helen Bernat, back in the 20s and 30s. But this is a really, really nice one. Very, very attractive. And then there was the big Fu Lion with all the famille rose enamels. We talked about this because I thought it was so nice, and the estimate seemed reasonable. It was estimated at 3,000 to 5,000 pounds. In the end, it brought 3,810 pounds, and it was around a foot tall, but it was a wonderful thing. I do wish they'd had the other one. It would have been a hell of a set. if they had both pieces. But the coloring on this was really, really lovely. It's a Qing example. I don't think it's, I don't think this was, well, I don't think it was probably 18th century. I think it was probably 19th century, but beautifully colored. Well, they said it was 18th century, so well, maybe it looks different underneath. But if it's 18th century, it's probably later in the 18th century, but still a wonderful example. 3,800 pounds. Beautiful thing, really lovely thing. And then over to this, the Longquan Southern Sung Celadon funerary jar. This had a fairly accurate estimate, I think. Estimated 20 to 30,000 pounds, went for 22,860 pounds. But a very nice one. It had its lid, which is quite nice. They don't always have their lids, of course. And the creatures on the shoulder look very nice. The glaze on it was very, very good. Had a lot going for it. I don't think this was a tough buy at all. This was a good buy because it looks so good all over. It looks very, very good all over. And this is not an enormous jar by any stretch. It's only about 8 inches. It comes out to about 10 inches tall, including the lid, which is not a big pot. These generally aren't very big, but this was a nice one. Had good color. They even had the receipt for it from Bonham's from, when was the receipt? 2016. And back in 2016, somebody paid $49,000. Wow, $49,000 for it. So whoever bought it originally back in 2016 lost a little bit of money. But the market's adjusted since then, and we all know that. And it's going to continue to adjust. If you're a dealer, don't buy things and hang on to them. I'd say buy them and sell them immediately in the market you're in, because you're not going to see the Asian art market surge upward for quite a while. I think it's going to go sort of sideways. Some pieces will go down, and I think there's a lot of stuff, as I've said before, that are going to be coming back into the market. It's a great time for collecting, though. It's a great time for collecting. It's going to be rough on the dealers, though, if they're holding expensive inventory. And then over to this really nice pair of Guangzhou Marken period iron red dragon cups. They were estimated at 1,500 to 2,500 pounds, and they ended up selling for 8,890 pounds. But these are wonderful. These are really good cups. And they were sold originally by Marchants, according to the notes. And a lot of copies of these are on the market. You want to be very, very, very careful. A lot of later copies of these from the from the more in the Republic period, and lots and lots and lots of them are being made right now. And they turn up all the time. We see them, turning up all over the United States in sales. Sometimes there's sets of 6 of them, and all this. Because they're fairly easy to copy, but this was a particularly fine set with good provenance, and that's why they did so well. If you see a piece that came from a prominent dealer with a good reputation for authenticity, especially pieces that are being heavily copied in the time period, it gives people confidence to go after it. If these didn't have the Marchant history behind them, they probably wouldn't have brought that much, to be perfectly honest, because so many people would just assume that they're probably Republic. And that's just the nature of collecting today, because the lines are getting very, very blurred, and they have been for some time. But these were lovely, so bravo. And then there was this. I remember talking about this because I thought they said it's Marken period to the Qianlong period, and it looked it to me. And but the estimate was only 1,500 to 2,500 pounds, and I was a little bit at a loss to understand why the estimate was so low. And I speculated that perhaps it had been damaged or something had happened to it. I thought the glaze was just wonderful on this thing. I thought it was great. But I was a bit of a loss to understand the very low estimate. There's the mark. Looked absolutely fine. I do wish they used more photos, though. Any rate, and it's a fairly good sized pot. It was 33 centimeters, or comes out to about 14 inches in height, roughly, but great color, and ended up going for 13,970 pounds, including the premium. So there you go, which is about 18,000 US, and I think that's probably about right. I don't know what the condition was for it. Let's see, they didn't mention it in the description, so maybe it had a repair, because I've seen these sell for more. We've all seen these sell for more, but whoever got this one, the color was on this was just splendid. So bravo on that. And then the Dragon Bowl. This was the Imperial Glaze Ennois decorated Dragon Bowl. There were two of these in the sale. One of them was better than the other. This was the better of the two. The bowl measured about, 6 inches or so in diameter? Something like that. 6 inches on 15.2 centimeters, 6 inches wide, but very nicely done. And these ennois bowls I think they're charming. And of course, they did them in many different colors. Green is a particularly good one. They did them in yellow too. But this was a really, really lovely bowl. And why is it dancing around like that? There we go. There's the decoration. You can really see it. And when you see these Kangxi bowls, when they do the enamel decoration, the dragons are often depicted. If you pay attention to how the dragon's head is depicted, and he's running forward here with all five claws out all on each foot and so forth. They did the enameling style almost identically to this. This is in sights decoration under the glaze, of course, and then they fill it in, and the glaze gets dark where it goes into the crevices where they carved it out, which gives it this beautiful outline. But pay attention to how the dragon's head is done and how he's drawn overall on the piece. And then when you see the enamel pieces, you'll see quite a bit of similarity in them. At any rate, this one did very, very well. It brought 28,550 pounds, or around 36,000 US in US currency. Nice example. And then over to this, the Nepalese parcel and gilt bronze figure of Vajrahara. Now this was a very, very nice one, and it was only 8 inches tall. It was very, very small, but it was a really sweet piece. What was the estimate on this? Was fairly modest. Yeah, it was estimated 8 to 10,000 pounds. Ended up going for 38,000 pounds. They make a lot of copies of these, and they turn up in Europe all the time in auction houses in France and in Austria and all over. These kinds of bronzes are heavily copied. This is a real one. It's got great surface on it, and notice the brown patina on the legs and then the gilding on the body, and it gives it such a nice contrast. And it was inset with jewels. I see coral on here, probably some turquoise, semi-precious stones and so forth. Very typical of these. Nice looking lotus base, not a lot of wear on the base. It looks good. And the overall piece was in wonderful condition as far as I could tell. It was really, really lovely condition. You can bring it in and take a good look at it. But this is a very, very attractive bronze. The surface looked good. The wear looked appropriate. The patina looked appropriate. Everything about this looked fine. Just a very, very nice example all the way to the bottom. Very, very good. And like I said, it did a good price. Brought 38,000 pounds. That works out to 46,000 U.S. currency, roughly, maybe a little more. All right. And then this was the next thing that came up. And this was a 6-character seal mark, and of the period. Zhaijing, Ming Dynasty, Qing Dynasty, rather, dragon vase. Very attractive, pretty good size too. What was this thing? It was 27 centimeters, so about 10 inches in height. Nice size. Wasn't a miniature gourd vase or anything. Pull it up. There it is. Very nice decoration. It did have a line in the body, which is why they gave it sort of a modest estimate. But despite that, it did just fine. There's the collector that it came from. But a very, very attractive piece. Really beautifully done. With the hairline in it, it still brought $21,590. This one you can understand why they gave it a modest estimate, because of the hairline. But the hairline, and we've been talking about this more and more, hairlines and minor bits of damage and repairs these days on rarities when they turn up don't seem to be having the impact they used to have. They used to be the kiss of death. That was it. You couldn't sell the thing very well at all. And in the last few years in particular, later Qing pieces, even with repairs, have done very well. This was 4,000 to 6,000. It brought 21,590 pounds. Now, of course, if it was perfect, it would have probably brought, I don't know, 60, 70,000 pounds. But it wasn't that long ago that this would have brought under 10,000 because of the hairline and the body. So they did the right thing by giving it that estimate and then letting the market decide. The market will tell you what things are worth every time. And then in the next sale that came up, this is the Asian Art Part 2 sale. And actually in this one they featured a 20th century sort of Republic, maybe early PROC vase. They gave it a $1,000 to $2,000 estimate, and this was a fairly large one. This was 48 centimeters tall, or about what does that work out to? About 20 inches tall, roughly, something like that, 18, 20 inches. $1,000 to £2,000 estimate. It sold for 24,130 pounds, which is a heck of a price. It was a beautiful piece, though. Beautiful, beautiful decoration. This is what I think people are starting to recognize when you look at the way this is done, even if it's an early PROC piece. The shading of the faces, the enamels, the details, the proportions, the scale, the activity, is really, really quite excellent on these. Always have been. And then you at the top, you have the Buddhist beads coming down, and the very fine rows of Ruyi heads running around it, lots of border decorations, all in glazed blue enamels. Those are all glazed blue, and then down over the piece. Beautifully done. And again, $24,130, or pounds rather. That brings it into about $26,000. That's a pretty good price. And then over to this. This was a little probably Kangxi period barrel form covered pot done in the Ming style. Nicely done though. Had its original ring handle top, probably iron, I would guess, or bronze. It's hard to tell from the picture. It could be iron. And then you have the dots and all that business trimming it. And these beautiful vine with a little bit of heaping and piling effect in the blue and white, and it was estimated at $1,000 to $2,000. Ended up going for 2,794 pounds, about $3,400, $3,500, and they just dated it straight as 18th century. So, and I can see why they do that. And it was 22 centimeters tall, so it's pretty good size, about 9 inches tall. So it was a fairly decent size one of these pots. They just call it a box and cover. I always think of them as being sort of barrel form, whatever. All right, and then over to this. This was something that we were really puzzled about prior to the sale. It was an unusual, as they said, unusual Chinese famille rose European subject ovoid vase. And I think when we did the preview, I said I think that estimate, there's something wrong with that estimate. 200 to 300 pounds, and they're dating this to the late Yongchen or early Qianlong period, which would put it, sort of at the high period of really, really fine porcelain decorating from the Yongchen to early Qianlong period. That's, of course, when Tan Ying and all that famous stuff was going on. And this was a beautifully decorated pot. Apparently, it wasn't marked on the bottom. I don't of any way, but is this European subject matter with the lady on it. Very unusual, and apparently everybody spotted it. It was only about 10 inches tall, and it ended up going for 10,160 pounds. And I don't think that was a crazy price. I think that was a sort of a great price, or even a bargain, perhaps. These types of vases are extremely rare. And when there have been other examples that have turned up, of course, that are imperial, they sell for a fortune. Way into 6 and 7 figures. This one wasn't one of those, but it was obviously done by a very, very good workshop, and it brought a lot more than the 100 to 200 to 300 pound estimate. I think that was just they had to know this. Wolley and Wallis has been around too long not to have known that. They probably just figured everybody will spot and it'll bring what it brings. That's all there is to it. And then there was this, of course, that was very nice, Yuan Dynasty, a bronze vase. Now, it's interesting, there's a pair of these coming up at Bottoms, I believe in it's either Paris or San Francisco, California, Los Angeles. One of their sales coming up, they've got a pair of these rather similar, and you don't see pairs of Yuan vases very often in bronze. But this was a very, very nice one. Had a really good-looking surface on it, nicely cast, good proportions, really classic. And it did fine. It brought 533 pounds against a 300 to 500 pound estimate. And these have come such a long way in the last 40 years. Back in the day, as they say, back in the 70s and 80s, even early 90s, you could buy these from antique shops all over New England for $75 to $100, and they dated them all as being 19th century. That was sort of the standard thing, and I've seen some pretty big collections of them that were gathered during that time. There's a fellow I saw in the Boston area that had hundreds of these that he had accumulated. He was a little eccentric, but it was a good load. And this was a nice one, and it brought a fair price. It's a great area to collect, too. If you're not working with a massive budget and you're going to only buy something a few times a year, Yuan and Ming bronzes, I think, represent an excellent value, relative bargains. And then there was this. This was the Guangzhou market period trigram Kong vases. And they were only estimated at 500 to 1,000 pounds. And when I looked at this, I couldn't understand because I looked at the photos on the bottom. They looked absolutely fine to me. They often have this black stuff on them. That was something they used to dress the feet with, I guess. And they looked absolutely fine. I couldn't understand what they were thinking. I think it was just. I think maybe they had come out of an estate and they didn't want to, mince around with them. They said, "Look, whatever they bring, they bring." 500 to 1,000 pound estimate. They brought 25,000 pounds plus, into U.S. dollars. That comes out to about 32,000 or about 15,000 a piece, and that's about right. And we had seen these in the preview. We sort of speculated on that. Over the years, I've had many of these, and I haven't sold one for. Under 12 or 15,000 in 20 years. It just shows you how strong and how much the market has changed. Again, back 30, 40 years ago, these weren't selling for a lot. They'd sell for a couple of $1,000s maybe. Now there's big interest in them. But these were very attractive. They had lovely color. So there you go. And then into the Japanese sale. This was the last day. The Japanese works of art sale, I think, did quite well. We'll go through a few of them. The Japanese market, of course, has been all over the place for the last 25 years. It's great if you're a collector. It's a little rough if you're a dealer. But it's the way the business is. There was one of these. This was a great little Japanese wood carving of a head, dated to the possibly the Kamakura period, 13th to 14th century. This wasn't an enormous head. Overall height, including the base, was only 23 centimeters. So it was only around 8 or 9 inches tall. The head itself was probably 4 inches, 5 inches tall. But it was a rather nice one. It had a great look to it. Yet very fierce eyes. I liked this quite a lot. There we are. Very attractive. And in the end, it did fine. And again, very modest, 889 pounds or about $1,000 in U.S. currency. And there is a similar lacquer Buddha head coming up at Freeman's on the 16th. So if you want one that's also very good, we talked about it. That's another one. It's not quite as old as this one, but not much newer. Roughly the same age. And very interesting things to collect. And then there was the ice cave vase. This was by Kozan, by Makuzo Kozan, and very rare, very, very unusual. He's, of course, had a huge amount of output during his life, but he also did a lot of experimenting with unusual forms, types, and shapes. And this was something he did, obviously, maybe on a special commission to someone. I don't remember what the notes all said, but beautifully done, this ice cave. Done on very rusticated, iron-rich clay, and then this beautiful white icing glaze flowing down over it with these little birds tucked inside, staying warm in the middle. It's an absolutely charming thing. And apparently there was a lot of interest in this. It did very well. It was estimated at 6,000 to 8,000 pounds, ended up going for 21,590 pounds, well over its estimate, but a rare thing. And that was, we had talked about it during the preview, because I said, these don't turn up very often, and I'm hoping it does really well, and it did. So there we go. And then there was this very nice double gourd a dish, blue and white, 17th century, during the early period of blue and white porcelain production. And this was fairly small. It's about 4 or 5 inches long, and it ended up doing fine. It brought 699 pounds, or about, that works out to about $850. But a rather nice example. There were some very nice porcelains in the sale, incidentally, that I hope if you're a porcelain buyer, you paid attention to them. But this is it, and it's all this incise decoration on the ground, underglazed blue, brown dressing on the rim, and so forth. Really nice looking thing. And then over to the big Japanese Arita jars. These were also early ones. They dated them to around 1700, 1710, but early 18th century, possibly late 17th century, but most likely early 1700s. And these were big. These were big. They were 62 centimeters tall with the lids, which is over, of course, 2 feet. They're about 2 foot, about 25 inches tall for the two of them. But beautiful decoration, and I think they were in pretty good shape, from what I could tell. Here's the blue and white. Love the Foo Lions on here. They're playing outside and having a good time. And then you have the bamboo trees. You've got the ho-ho birds, or the birds of paradise swooping down on them. And then you have the vine patterns at the top. Lots of vines and flowers on it. Very tropical. And this massive teardrop finial handle on the top of the lid. Very, very attractive. And this was estimated at 2,000 to 3,000 pounds. Ended up coming in at around 5,000 pounds, or around about $6,500 US. And again, in England lately, it seems that Japanese Arita ware seems to be getting some interesting traction. We've seen it through Eats. They've had a number of sales with large Arita vases and Amari vases in them that have done extremely well, 6, 7, 8, 9,000 pounds, if they're particularly attractive. And now you had these do very well. So maybe things are changing over in the UK for these big decorative pieces. And then there was this, we talked about this, was a Yabu Maizan vase with a lid. And it's a type that he was known to have done. This was sort of a recognizable form. And we talked about it because he made these. They were extremely popular with these banded decorations on them of mountains, people, and birds and nature and so forth. And these are not enormous vases. These are fairly modest-sized vases. This one is only 12.5 centimeters tall, or about a little over 5 inches tall, roughly. It was estimated, I thought, fairly modestly at 1,500 to 2,500 pounds. Ended up doing very well. It brought 4,800 pounds. But again, very well-known type. And people that collect, a lot of people have these and they got worn on them. They're missing their lids and they want to get an upgrade. This is what they're going to go after, and sometimes you get a pretty good price for them. All right, and then over to this, there were lots of lacquer in this sale. The Japanese sale had quite a bit of good lacquer in it. This was a very nice Zuri Bako, a writing cover box with an inkstone inside of it. It was estimated at 3,000 to 5,000 pounds, which I thought was very, very modest. I bookmarked this to see how it did, and it went well over that. It went 2.5 times estimate. It ended up selling for 12,000 pounds. But I like the monkey on the cover. I love animals on decorations. And here you have this wonderful monkey carrying its child and 2 other monkeys climbing up under it. They're just sort of having a day for themselves on this big old pine tree. And there's another one up above hanging from a branch. There's a lot of activity going on. And there it is. Here's the interior of it, double gourd box, inkstone. Then on the back, you have blossoming trees and a deer and a bird and so forth, some old photographs of it. All the components were there. It was a very attractive package. And the lacquer seemed to be in good shape. The lacquer is extremely price sensitive when it comes to condition, as you probably know. So if you nick a corner on a lacquer box, it really affects the value a lot. And this one looked to be in quite good shape. So it did very well, 12,000 pounds. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the Jizai Okamono. Jizai Okamonos these are articulated snakes. And if you don't know what these do, you see all these little, we're going to blow it up as much as we can. There we go. All these little joints are all separate. So you can mold and shape these any way you want them to pose them. So if you get sick of them looking like this, with his head up like this, you can coil them in a circle. You put them on a couch and scare a family member. Have some fun with it. And this was a really, really lovely one. Beautiful patina, very meticulously made, obviously. There's so much work in this thing. It's astounding. All these sections work together and then tapering down perfectly to the tail. Think about the planning that has to go into making one of these. So that each section successively is slightly smaller than the previous one, but it doesn't taper down so fast that you run out of runway putting the thing together by the time you're done. This was quite an astonishing feat. and these were done during the Meiji. This one was probably done during the Meiji period. Do they give a date to it? Iron Josiah steak. There's a Edo or Meiji period. So late Edo, early Meiji period, and they're just saying 18th to 19th century. And it was estimated at 3,000 to 5,000 pounds. Ended up going for 27,900 pounds. Very, very good price. But this was also fairly long. It was 79 centimeters long, which is 2 3/4 feet long when you stretch them out. So this is a pretty good sized object. But loads of fun. There's lots of collectors for these out there. And so that's sort of it. The sales did really well. As you can see, we're still up in New Hampshire. We're going to be here for another day. We delayed leaving because it was snowing. That was our excuse anyway. And we'll be getting back to Massachusetts tomorrow. But anyway, that's what's going on. Those were the sales. I think they did great overall. I think the other sales, I think Drew Meats had a good sale. Roseberry's had a good sale. Bonham's had a good sale over there. And, so that's fine. Prices have changed. That's part of it. Prices go up, prices come down a little bit. They go sideways for a while. Some piece prices are still increasing. And if you're a dealer, you got to follow all that. If you're not, take advantage of the dips, as they say, and buy what you love. Buy what you love, and always leave a bid. Leave a bid. You never know when you might hit something. All right. Even if it seems stupid, leave the bid. Even if it seems stupid, leave the bid. All right. All right. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back Friday with another video, and greetings from New Hampshire. All right. Bye-bye.